We are joined by criminal defense attorney and legal analyst Bernarda Villalona. Bernarda, you watched this Alec Murdaugh trial and analyzed that for us. And now there is another case that is at least suggested specifically by a Netflix documentary that it might be connected to the same family. What does it mean when 8 years after someone's death, the police say, okay, this might have been a homicide. Maybe we messed up the first time.
So this is huge news for Stephen Smith's family, because you have to think, because it was ruled before as an accident, there was no investigation. But now that it's ruled as a homicide, it's an open case. It's one where law enforcement are going to take a serious look and conduct a serious investigation to find out who is responsible for the death of Stephen Smith. Before, when it's closed as an accident, no one else looks at it. The prosecution doesn't look at it. But now you have law enforcement, and specifically SLED, who said yesterday that they will back and say that it's a homicide and look into it.
So South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, that's what SLED stands for. That is who's doing this investigation. But why was this not done at first? You know, it seems like kind of it makes them look pretty bad, doesn't it? That they didn't look at this really very closely at first. And now, after it's been on Netflix, somebody looked back and said, maybe we should take another look at that. And now they're investigating it as a homicide.
Exactly, because you have to think any investigation now, if there's a prosecution, if someone is ultimately arrested for it, that it's going to poke some holes in the case in the sense that it was initially ruled as an accident. So whoever is held responsible for this, and there's an arrest and there's a prosecution and there's a trial, they're going to be able to cross-examine whether it's the medical examiner or whoever conducts the autopsy, but also the investigators, the initial investigators who responded to the scene, and say, wait, you deemed this to be an accident. You didn't deem to say that someone was responsible, criminally responsible for that. And that can create some seeds of doubt for that jury in determining the guilt of whoever is the person that's going to be on trial.
Well, and it should be mentioned here that the family did raise money to exhume this body and have an independent autopsy so that they could re-examine it. But that has not happened yet. So this determination that this is going to be investigated as a homicide, according to SLED, again, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, that was made according to that division back in 2021, which is when the documentary was released, which began, which was after the murders of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh, for which Alec Murdaugh was recently convicted. Do we have all that? I am just sort of wondering, someone has to talk about this, because you're talking about exhuming a body that has been underground for 8 years. And so my guess is they still are just looking for someone to talk, because I'm not sure, even if that body does prove that there was a murder in this case, trying to prove that is going to be impossible unless someone comes forward and said, I was there, I know what happened.
Exactly. And Mitch, what's happening is that what the family is hoping, and also what SLED agents are hoping, that because of all the attention that Alex Murdaugh trial received, that people will now be open and willing to step forward, to make phone calls, to say what they know, whatever information they believe they have as the death of Stephen Smith. So that is the hope of law enforcement, and that is the huge hope of Stephen Smith's family. They also have put out an 800 number, so a tip line, so people can call in. So if they have any information as to what happened to Stephen Smith, that it can be relayed to them, especially since now Alex Murdaugh is in jail. They are hoping that some of those pressures or fears that existed before doesn't exist now, and help people
that's right.
come
This
forward.
family was a legal dynasty in Hampton County where this death took place. And so I guess the idea is that dynasty is falling apart. There's nothing to fear. You might have people being able to come out and speak that previously were not willing.
Yeah, and aside from that, also, you have that SLED is going to be handling the investigation. It's not going to be the local county law enforcement officers handling the investigation, because remember, that's also a fear, and people thought that they were tied, the local law enforcement was tied to the Murdaugh family. So if there was any involvement by the Murdaughs, they didn't want to be associated with that, and they feared any kind of backlash from that, or information will get back to them.
Yeah, and the New York Post is reporting that a source close to them said that they uncovered new evidence in the death of Stephen Smith, while investigating this Alec Murdaugh case. So again, there is no direct connection to Buster Murdaugh, but he's come out with a statement. The Netflix documentary certainly suggests a case in this, and it will be interesting to see where this investigation leads now that it is back open. So criminal defense attorney Bernarda Villalona, thank you so much. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation in your cable lineup. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-based, unbiased coverage.